Every afternoon, she sat by the same window, holding her daughter's old sweater, waiting for a voice that would never come back. Until one quiet day, her cat brought home someone who needed love just as much as she did. Margaret Whitmore had stopped opening her curtains long ago. Her small countryside house felt frozen in time, dusty picture frames, untouched teacups, and the faint scent of lavender that once belonged to her daughter, Emily. 2 years had passed since the accident, but grief still lived in every corner of the home. Margaret rarely spoke to anyone anymore, except for Oliver, her gray tabby cat. Oliver had been Emily's cat before she passed away. Since then, he became Margaret's only companion. Every day, he sat beside her at the window as she stared outside, watching the world continue without her. Neighbors would wave. Children would laugh as they walked to school. Life moved forward, but Margaret felt left behind until one rainy afternoon, Oliver didn't come home. Margaret waited by the door for hours. Anxiety twisted in her chest. Oliver had never stayed out so long. As the sky darkened, she finally put on her coat and stepped outside, something she had anteed unwillingly in months. She walked slowly through the nearby park, calling his name, Oliver. Oliver. And then she heard a soft voice. "He's here, with me." Margaret turned and saw a small boy sitting alone on a bench under a tree. Oliver rested comfortably in his lap, purring. The boy looked about 10 years old, thin, quiet, with tired eyes that didn't match his age. "I'm sorry," the boy said softly. "He followed me. I think he likes me." Margaret hesitated. "He usually doesn't leave home." The boy nodded. "I don't usually have anyone either." His name was Noah, a foster child who had recently moved into a nearby group home. He had been transferred from family to family for years, never staying long enough to call anywhere home. Oliver rubbed his head against Noah's arm, and for the first time in months, Margaret felt something shift inside her chest. She sat beside him. They didn't talk much that first day, but they watched Oliver chase raindrops together, sharing a quiet understanding of loneliness. Before leaving, Noah asked carefully, "Can I see Oliver again sometime?" Margaret paused, then nodded. "Yes, you can." Days turned into weeks. Noah began visiting every afternoon after school. At first, he only came to see Oliver, bringing toys, treats, and small drawings of the cat. But slowly, he and Margaret began to talk. He helped her water the dying plants in her garden. She taught him how to bake Emily's favorite chocolate cookies. They shared stories about loss, the ones they were strong enough to tell, and the ones they kept silent. Margaret noticed something she hadn't felt in a long time. Laughter. It started small. A smile when Oliver knocked over a cup. A chuckle when Noah burned the first batch of cookies. And eventually, full laughter echoing through the once silent home. One evening, Noah asked quietly, "Do you think people who leave still want us to be happy?" Margaret looked at Emily's photo on the wall, her eyes filled with tears. But this time, they weren't only from pain. "I think," she said gently, "they send us new people when our hearts are ready again." Noah nodded slowly. "I hope so," he whispered. Months passed. Margaret began opening her curtains again. She started attending community events with Noah. She even volunteered at the foster center, reading stories to children who needed comfort. Her neighbors noticed the change, the way her eyes carried warmth again. But healing is never a straight line. One day, Noah arrived with red eyes. "I'm being transferred," he said quietly. "Another home. Another city." Margaret felt her chest tighten, fear creeping back in. She had already lost one child. The thought of losing Noah too felt unbearable. That night, she sat alone with Oliver, staring at Emily's photo. "I can't lose another child," she whispered. But something inside her answered differently this time. Love wasn't something to hold tightly out of fear. Love was something to give, even when it hurt. The next morning, Margaret made a decision. She contacted the foster agency. Weeks later, after long interviews and emotional paperwork, Noah stood at her front door again, holding a small suitcase. "You're my permanent home now?" he asked, almost afraid to believe it. Margaret knelt down and hugged him tightly. "Yes," she whispered, "if you want it to be." Oliver circled them both, purring loudly as if he had planned everything from the beginning. Years later, Margaret's house became known as the warmest home on the street. The curtains stayed open. Laughter filled every room, and at the same window where she once waited for a past that could never return, she now watched a future filled with new memories. Noah studying at the table, Oliver sleeping in the sunlight, and Emily's photos smiling gently from the wall. Margaret realized something profound. Grief had never truly left her, but it had made space for a deeper, stronger kind of love. The kind that finds you again when you least expect it. The heart may break, but it also has an incredible ability to love again. Healing often begins when we allow new connections to enter our lives. Have you ever experienced a moment when unexpected love helped you heal from a deep loss?